Hello, can y'all hear me if I stand here or not? I think so. Hey, so welcome. Thank you for being here. This room we're booked to capacity theoretically. I think everybody was on a waiting list got in. I have to stand here. For disclosure, we're taping this meeting, and will be available as a video on our website for the people who couldn't get in because we had such a high demand. We are doing a second one on, I think it's Wednesday. It'll be the same presentation, the same everything, but we had a really high demand, so thank you for being here. I'm Andy Linsice. I'm Assistant Director of Development Services. I got the pleasure of implementing 3167. That came to me. So we have a presentation. It is not pretty. I mean, this is not a APA style presentation. It's all words. I will convert it to a PDF and put it on our website so you can download it afterwards. I would ask that you hold your questions till the end if possible. And if you have questions, I need you to come up to the front mic because, again, we're recording and we want to capture it for whoever watches it later. It's not a live broadcast, it's just recorded. So at the end, if you want to ask questions, please come up to this mic over here so everybody can hear you. And I guess I'm glued to here, which I don't look like, but that's okay. No, you can walk around. Oh, I can walk. Yay, I'm not glued. So, again, welcome. So we're talking about House Bill 3167. What I'm going to go through is kind of overview of what it is, which most of you probably know, but what we've done with our emergency rules and our ordinance that we've passed, an outline of what the process changes are, which is probably why most of you are here. The project assessment is a new thing we've created, so I want to talk about it, but most of the time I want to leave for question and answer at the end. I want to leave a lot of time because I think that'll be the most informative for everyone. And like I said, this will be a PDF on the website we've created. It's up. It's austintexas.gov/HB3167. Pretty easy to find. It just went up today. It'll still be growing as we go through this. So what is this? The 86 legislature passed it, amended Title 212, 232 of the Subdivision Code. Mandates 30-day action with comment. So we did 30-day action before, but we didn't really give you comments. So now we have to give comments. There's a lot of implications from that. Updates get 15 days. These are all calendar days, not business days. Actions are limited to approval with conditions, or disapproval with reasons. So our responses will be one of those three formats. If we don't respond, of course, it's deemed approved. Let's see, no new comments. Modifies approval requirements to some plats. It made some things administrative that weren't before. Our interpretation of the ordinance is does not apply to site plans. There was some confusion about that, but our legal guidance and following other cities around the state was this does not apply to site development permits. Subdivision construction plans, yes, but your general site plan, no. So overview of what we've done. We created this ordinance and the rules in less than a month. It's been quite an effort. The ordinance was passed on emergency basis on the 22nd by the City Council. We went to Commissioner's Court with Travis County on Tuesday, and they've adopted Title 30 amendments to our Land Development Code for the single office. As most of you know, in the ETJ with Travis County, we review as a single office. I didn't mention, but we have Anna Bolin and Teresa Calkins here from Travis County. We have other folks, my staff here, Denise Lucas, our director, just so everyone's aware. Our current code and rules say that we have 20 business days. We now have changed that to 30 calendar days. And it's for action, not necessarily our review. So we have to get your application to a commission in 30 days, not just issue our comments. That's a big change. Updates are currently 10 business days. Now it's 15 calendar days. They're roughly equivalent, but again, the difference being if you have a commission-approved application, I have to put you on a commission agenda by that deadline. And that's quite different than just issuing you comments. We've made our application, if you make changes to your application after it's filed that are not in response to comments, we'll reject those changes. Just so you know, I mean, you need to file what you plan to approve, which usually isn't a problem with subdivisions. Those site plans, that would be really hard. Subdivisions shouldn't be as bad. You can't create new non-compliance with your changes. We're limited to no new comments. You're limited to no new compliance issues. Seems reasonable. again, they modified in 212 the requirement that some applications have a formal public hearing and a commission approval, mainly re-subdivisions of less than 4 lots and less. So today, those go to a commission. After the passage of this bill, they're administrative. So that's 4 lots and less, fronting on a public street, don't require significant utility improvements. That's a big chunk of our applications at the City of Austin. Those will now be administratively approved. They also modified flag lot variances to be an administrative approval, not going to commission. Again, we did this out of an exposure for risk. If we're late, if we make posting errors, if we don't get where you're supposed to be, you're automatically approved. So I'm going to trust that our staff will review those appropriately, and council has confirmed that that's okay. An interesting change is Land Use Commission. So when I say Land Use Commission, I'm speaking collectively of Zoning and Plating and the Planning Commission. In our code, they are the one singular body called Land Use Commission. So if you hear me say that, just understand I'm speaking of both Planning Commission and Zoning and Plating together collectively. Your applications can now go to either commission, regardless of geographic or neighborhood plan. That's subdivisions only. It did not change for zoning or site plans. And we did that to allow us to make sure we can get you to a commission and not be too restrictive on when you can file. Commissioners Court and our Land Use Commission will act on the same day. We both have the 30-day deadline. So you'll submit, we'll put you on the Land Use Commission and the Commissioners Court on the same day. Currently, don't want to say forever, but Commissioners Court acts in the morning, Land Use Commission in the evening. Same day approval. Make a long day for y'all if you have one that's going to be pulled for discussion. Another big change out of that is you can keep coming back. So you file, you go to commission, you get disapproval with reasons, or even approval. If you get approval with conditions, you still have to go back to resolve those issues. You can come back when you file your update. We'll send you back. So we have 15 days from when you file to get you to another commission. Again, these are very short timelines for us, but that's what we get to do. Big changes that I want to highlight. So a subdivision application today can take up to a year. It's 90 days. From when you formally file it, you should be able to get to commission at least 3 times, given our shot clock of having to be there in 30 days and 15. If you're responsive, you can get there in 3 times before you run out of 90 days. Some about application life starting when you're done with completeness check. We've changed how order of process works. Subdivisions need to go in order: preliminary plan, approved, then your final plat, then your construction plans. Again, with the limitation of no new comments, no changes. If you're in the process and the commission changes your preliminary plan, I don't have a way to review it if you change it. So we have to exclude those consecutive approvals. We do have a director's discretion for minor stuff. If you've been to the commission and they said, oh yeah, go record an easement, we'd let you in. You know, if you still have major outstanding issues, we would say no concurrent review. That's a big change, but we didn't change subdivision construction plans. You can still have a year to process those. Those are primarily technical. There's a lot of work in that, so those do take a lot longer. So we have a year on those, but we have 90 days on the others. And again, that should be 3 review cycles for you. And with the way we've structured this, you should easily be approved. You really should. We have prerequisite requirements now that we've added. Again, so we've decoupled some of the things that we do in our process today that make it take so long, and say, go get that resolved, and when you're done, file your subdivision. That's similar to many other municipalities, what they already do. We've tried to put everything in one piece. Now we pull them apart. Flag lots and resubs, there's that again. We created a project assessment process, which I'll go through in detail. It's modeled after a conceptual plan, like conceptual plan / project assessment lets us give you high-level feedback. So I know a lot of you have clients who say, well, what's the city going to say? You can file this, it has requirements, and we'll give you recommendations and analysis on what we see. That should be an improvement. Again, I think there'll be a lot of adjustment to this, but that will be an improvement. Rules, we're adopting emergency rules. They'll go up tomorrow. They will be linked on our website. We changed the review times like I talked about. We also added the requirements for project assessment in the criteria. We use the building criteria because that is the criteria manual that Development Services has control over. So we've put our stuff in that. We also have changes to the drainage criteria manual, pretty minor. And then Austin Energy has modified the utilities criteria manual for the Austin Energy design criteria. Again, these will be available on Friday. You'll be able to download them and review them. They're emergency rules. We have to come back with permanent. So we have, I think, 120 days, and we can extend it for, I think, 60 days after that, that we have to have permanent rules. And that requires stakeholder process, a separate engagement. My intent, what I hope we do, is let this run for a couple of months and look for opportunities to improve. You know, if there's pinch points that we don't know about, that we didn't anticipate, we'll come back and try to catch that. So feedback, we'll take it. I'll probably get a lot of emails, I hate this, but if it's constructive feedback, we'll take it and try to improve. We are committed to that. Again, we created this really fast. I mean, about a month from start to finish on the ordinance and the rules once we figured out what we were going to try to do. So I anticipate bumps in the road. So we will take feedback. I guess if you want to say you hate it, that's fine. We'll take it. Other outcomes. So things that come out of this that are really difficult for us, that we take 28 days to review, and we now need to be 100% on time, no more 90%. We're 100 for subdivisions. Well, at 28 days, we have to mail notice for things going to the commission 16 days in advance, which means we're going to put things on the agenda. There's not going to be a recommendation, and there won't be much backup. We're going to go to the commission and say, here's how we recommend you act. That will be a challenge for our commission and for our citizens who say, well, where's the backup? What are you recommending? Well, come to the meeting and we'll tell you about it. That's going to be difficult, and for the commissioners. We will have submittal windows. Most likely every Monday will be a submittal window tied to a commission date. That corresponds to the 30 days. So again, we have to accept your formal application, get you to a commission within 30 days, and to do that we have to limit those things. But we decoupled the commissions with the geographic restrictions so you could file every Monday to try to give you as many opportunities. We can take in, I think, 16 to 18 applications on one day, so I don't think we'll see any limitations on you being able to file. Once you're through completeness check and ready to file, we'll get you an appointment. We'll prioritize things that are trying to go through. I've told Roderick to hold some spots to make sure that if someone needs a formal application in on subdivision, we can get it in. So we will take care of that. Completeness check hasn't changed. I mean, this doesn't change that. Every day, 8:30 to 11, you can file your completeness check. We'll take it. Doesn't matter. Single office applications. Travis County's created a code compliance summary document, which I think they're going to have available on their website soon, right? Next day or two. We'll probably link it on ours that goes with the applications. We have the prerequisite stuff as part of the completeness check process, which I'll go through in detail. An interesting thing, just so you know if you see it, anything that we administratively approve, for us to do an administrative application, I have to administratively approve with conditions. I can't deny you. 212 now specifies that only the responsible body can act to disapprove, so we have to approve you with conditions. Same conditions, it'll still be a comment report saying these are the conditions of approval, but it'll say approved. So if you see that and you go, well, what's the conditions? And you go, well, they got 10 pages of conditions. That's just to keep it administrative. We're not allowed to deny. Not if we don't respond. So if we issue a comment report and someone didn't respond, it's approved. I mean, they've missed their window. No postponements. This will be another very challenging thing for our community, both commissioners and the citizens. Well, I want to talk about this some more. Well, let's keep talking because you have to act today or it's approved. And the commission has the same restrictions we do of you must specify a code compliance issue when you disapprove. So if they want to disapprove it, they certainly are free to do so as the responsible authority, but they will have to recommend why. And they will have to point out what section of code or criteria the application doesn't comply with. Same holds for Commissioner's Court for Title 30 applications. They'll have to give a reason why that was disapproved. And of course, if you fix it, you can come back. So that's a big change. Austin especially is notorious for postponements. And so that will be difficult. We'll be doing a briefing to PC and ZAP joint I think it's next week or the week after, to talk about this for sure, because that's That alone is a huge change for them. Outline of the process changes. So today, this is what we do. Pretty simplistic. You can file everything at once if you want to, right? You can drop everything on us and we'll take it. And then it takes a year to get through. Going forward, this doesn't hold anymore. A lot of non-code compliance, the big one I'll highlight for you, service extension request, have it done before you come in for a subdivision. If you don't have service, don't come in. Zoning, if you have zoning, you have to have it finished before you file. Again, because if council or commission at the dais says, I don't want access to that street, that changes your application fundamentally. So we need that process finished before you come in so we can get through. The order of process talked about, if you have a variance, we're going to require a project assessment. It's a discretionary approval. I'll talk about it in a minute about what we're trying to do with that and why it works. We do, again, have some ability to vary things by the director. If your preliminary plan has been to commission and the last thing you need is an easement, again, we'd probably say, fine, bring your plat in. You know, there's not any risk for us there, or nothing's going to change. We have a certification statement that we'll ask whoever's filing to say, I don't have any prerequisites and I don't have any code changes, waivers, or variances. I am compliant. We're going to ask you to sign that so that if it turns out you do have them, we're fully aware that you will have to go back to the project assessment process to get a variance recommendation. So what it ends up looking like now is go get your zoning. I don't know, I think I have a pointer. You know, go get your zoning, it doesn't show up, but go get your zoning. You can start a project assessment at any time. If you want to start that, you could. Then file your preliminary, final plat, subdivision construction plan, site plan. Zoning and site plan are not changed. If you want to put them all together, you can. You can file plats and site plan together. The only exclusion we've made is zoning. And again, because of what might happen in the future, is it limited? Yes, but since we can't make changes to your application after it's filed, we need the zoning completed first. That's a big change, I know, for a lot of you. So just highlighting that one. But that's what it looked like. My thought is that after a few months, when this settles down and we figure out everybody gets used to it, this will go a lot quicker. It will be easier. Plats will be approved pretty quickly. The back and forth negotiation on I need a variance, I don't need a variance, will occur in the project assessment phase. Those have shorter review times too, by the way. Prerequisites. So these are the things that when you come in, we're going to look at a completeness check and say, do you have it, yes or no? And if you don't have it, we're going to say you're not complete. Zoning, I've talked about the variance. Water, wastewater, service extension. For Title 30 applications, a will serve letter and capacity confirmation with your preliminary plan. So have that when you come in and file. Not the commitment, but for the preliminary. For the final, looking for the commitment when you come in Title 30. If it's not Austin Water. Vested rights, we decoupled the application and the vested rights petition for subdivisions only. So you can come in with your DP01 or other preliminary type application and ask for your vested rights. It's not that rare in subdivision that someone says I have vested rights with a preliminary plan. That's pretty unusual. A service extension request or something might create that situation, but it's not very often. A lot of times you have an active preliminary and you say, I just want to comply with my preliminary. That's pretty simple. But we're asking you to do that in advance. If you change your grandfathering stance mid-review, you'll probably have to start over because you've changed the application requirements. We have new rules to apply. So just know that's now a prerequisite, is go get that done. You know, today you file your vested rights and your application together. Go do it first now. We'll give you an answer and you'll know what you're doing. TIAAs in the county, our TIAAs for the city are triggered by zoning, so those will already be done because you'll have got your zoning approved. In the county, we'd need to get that wrapped up. TxDOT driveway permit, if you're showing access to a TxDOT roadway, I need confirmation of some sort from them that they're going to allow that street to be there. So I know you're not going to have to change your application. So go get a letter, an email, whatever it takes, a formal driveway permit. Same from Travis County, street location confirmation prior to filing your plan. Go have the conversation about, I want this street here, and make sure they're going to approve it. Let's see, phasing agreements for Travis County. It's a draft of it, how you're going to comply with your TIA, outlining those things. A sealed fiscal cost estimate for a final plat, so that can go forward. Easement vacations, if you need to vacate easements or right-of-way, file it and get a recommendation from whoever holds it, be it Austin Water, whoever owns that easement. Don't have to have that approved, but we need something saying, yeah, if you give us an alternative, I'll let you vacate it. Because your application is dependent upon that, and we want to make sure you actually can get through. If you have non-standard construction, you're proposing some, I don't know, unusual retaining wall system, go get that done and come in with something recommending it. Water quality payment fee in lieu, if you request it, we'll evaluate it at the completeness check and say, yep, that's okay, you're in the right watershed, yes, you can do it. We're not going to approve that you, all the final details of it, but we'll tell you yes or no. If you're in the wrong watershed, you can't do fee in lieu. We would say you're not complete. Let's see. So these are things that require a project assessment. So project assessment, again, is akin to a development assessment with a little more detail. And so if you have any variances or waivers from our criterias, we're going to ask you to file a project assessment. We will review it, give you an analysis, and make a recommendation on your variance tied to the project assessment or your waiver. So it's not a formal approval, but we'll be making a recommendation. You'll know what staff's recommendation is. If it's environmental variance, you need to go to the Environmental Commission, we'll do that. Environmental Commission issues recommendations, not approvals. So when you bring your final application in, you'll have your recommendation in hand with my final plat or my preliminary plan. Environmental Commission's already recommended this. It will then go straight to Commission in 30 days with a recommendation for approval or action if you haven't changed it. So again, that shortcuts the formal process significantly. You'll have committable answers before you file. And that was, I think that's actually quite a good process improvement in my mind. Before you spend the money to do your complete design, you can get an answer. More prerequisite stuff, RSMP, if you're not going to do on-site detention, file a project assessment, let watershed evaluate it. You're still going to have to prove up downstream conveyance and those kind of things, and that might be part of your formal, but at least you'll get a recommendation. Alternative compliance for water quality, SOS adjustments, which of course go all the way to council, redevelopment, non-standard legal documents. If you know your client will not sign our standard documents, file it, because we're going to do that now. I can't have it tied up in a legal process for 9 months. So if you have something non-standard, I'm going to ask you to do a project assessment, file it, we'll get it as to form. You don't have to have the field notes, but the form of the easement dedications we want approved before you come in. Then it's pretty simple. Here's my field notes. Great. We're good. Get it signed. Right-of-way vacation, encroachment, license, those aren't terribly common with subdivisions, but if you have that stuff, we want it done. Parkland, if you're asking for fee in lieu and you don't want to dedicate parkland, go do their early parkland determination, I think is what it's called, or a predetermination. Do that as part of a project assessment, or you could do it standalone if you wanted, and bring it to us. Chapter 26, if you're going to use or take parkland, obviously we're going to want to do that first, but that's a lengthy process. Other things for project assessment, floodplain. Obviously you need a floodplain variance. You got to go all the way to council. We're not going to do that inside 90 days. So we would do this get your recommendation for that in advance. If you're going to not use our studies, so we have adopted studies for watersheds. If you don't want to use it, you want to change it, do a project assessment, get that determined, then file your plat. Clomer, Lomer, those take a long time anyway, so I don't think that's a big deal for anybody. Small lots inside the city, that's a waiver variance process. I ask you to do it again. Same thing, plat vacations. Our analysis of are we going to let you vacate that plat? Does it create non-compliant conditions with streets or utilities? We'll do that through a project assessment and give you a recommendation. So project assessment, what is it? So we've created by administrative rule, section 5.9 of the Building Criteria Manual. Those of you familiar with a conceptual site plan process that we created, not a lot of you have used it. It mirrors it almost exactly. It's very, very similar. So we're going to do those in 21 days. It's shorter than a subdivision. Try to get you responsive to those. 14 days on updates. The goal would be to get you answers and keep you moving. And again, it's a high-level review. So say you don't have any variances, but you just want to know our opinion of what you've proposed. We'll give it to you. Say these are the critical code compliance issues we see. Correct them or don't. But if you file your plat without fixing those things, obviously we're going to flag them. So the idea is to give you information before you formally submit, spend all the money to do a formal subdivision. The high level, for those of you concerned about vested rights, the day you file your project assessment is a fair notice for us. You've given us enough information. We would have to recognize it. We have an actual process for a fair notice application that we'd ask you to file that'll document that. I've got a new project. I'm starting it today. Probably see a lot of these right before the new code gets adopted, would be my guess. I can see that coming, but that's okay. We'll assess it. We'll give you recommendations. We will not be giving you. There's no completion to that process. It's recommendations and analysis. So it's not a formal. Okay, I've got my approval. If you go through it once, we give you comments, and you're happy with what you have, move on. If you don't have a variance, or if your variance recommendation says we're going to deny you and you move on, you're at risk. That's up to you. You could do it, but we're going to ask you to go through the process so that we have enough time to work with you back and forth to resolve, especially environmental variances where there's a lot of back and forth, give and take. We have 180 days on those. See, the last time we issue you a comment or a report and analysis, you have 180 days to file your formal application to lock all that down. So as long as you come give us a formal application within 180 days, it locks you down and off you go. So that's what I have to say. I really do want to leave the rest of this for question and answer because I know that was super fast. I'm happy to go back and do it. So if you want to ask questions, I need you to come up here where we can record you at the mic, please. So, and then again, this is live as of today. This website, it's pretty simple. I think most people can remember it without even writing it down. So when you come up, please say who you are so that since you're on TV.
Hi, Andy. Pam Madeir. Is it that we have to just be put on an agenda within 30 days, or does the hearing have to take place within 30 days?
The commission has to act.
Okay, thank you.
So non-action by the commission or non-action by staff administratively results in automatic approval. State law now says either issue an approval with conditions, or disapproval with reasons. And if we don't take one of those three actions, the plat is considered approved, and then there's provisions in the law that say what we have to do. We have to issue a certain certificate and other stuff. So it's actual action.
Hi, Amanda Brown. I'm still a little confused. When you read the state law, it does say site development permits are under this bill, so why is the city ordinance excluding those? Law department's not here. I'll tell you to I will direct your questions to the law department, but based on our legal advice from TML, our city attorneys, and what other cities in Texas have done, it says site plan, but site plan in Houston means a plot plan. Site plan in other jurisdictions means something else. In Austin, a site plan is a thing, right? We have it defined, we have an application for it, we have a lot of rules. Site plans are not under 212. So when we do a site plan review, we're looking at 211 zoning and other things, not 212 a subdivision code. And again, the term site plan applies in other jurisdictions differently than it does here. So that's my answer, but please contact the law department if you'd like to discuss that. Okay, and then I have one more question. So if something substantially changes in the review process, then and you said you would reject it. So if you substantially change something, I guess you just kind of need to start the whole process over. Is that how that? And are we going to have guidelines for what is too big of a modification?
That would be very difficult for us to do without being too limiting. So yes, if you substantially change the entire project, you switch from 60-foot lots to 50, that's not the same application. That is clearly not the same thing. You shifted an intersection around a little bit in response to some of our comments, okay. Minor changes to things. You went from 40 lots to 60 lots all of a sudden, that's a different application. There's not a bright line that I could define for you, but there is some judgment there. We'll try to work with you, but if it clearly triggers a whole lot of new non-compliant issues that we have not previously seen, we're going to say no, or ask you to start over.
What happens, let's say there's an automatic approval because no one answered and you miss something like public safety or fire. What happens in that case?
So I believe our strategy will be an FYI comment to the engineer and to the owner that although staff can't require you to make this change, we strongly recommend that you comply with our drainage manual, our floodplain requirements, or whatever. We would be, if someone wants to press the case, we would be forced to approve it.
but we would be on record as saying this isn't safe, we don't recommend it, we recommend you make the changes. State law says I can't force you. I would have to push it forward and approve it, but it would be we would be well documented, and I would say your owner would be at risk, and the engineer would be at risk, I mean, for sure, if it's a clear public safety issue. I mean, we have a lot of comments that, kind of aren't public safety, but we have a lot that can be. And so we would document it, but it would be an FYI. We can't force you to do it.
Okay, thanks.
This is for both of y'all. So if I'm making an application to the single office, on the submittal day, can somebody explain to me what that's gonna look like? Are we gonna have both staff, both county and city staff there?
So for formal or for completeness check?
I guess for both.
So completeness check, the county will be participating in the completeness check. They have now their code compliance summary, but they'll be making comments in the completeness check process about whether you're complete to come in. And once you file the application, nothing changes based on what we do today. It's just when it goes to commission changes. So today we send things to our land use commission, then the commissioner's court. In this case, it'd be the same process. We review it, you're approved, you're ready to go. We would just put you on the commission and the land use commission the same day. So Anna can maybe give a little more.
Hi, Anna Boland, Travis County, TNR, Transportation Natural Resources. With me, I have Teresa Calkins, and she'll be able to speak a little bit more about the code compliance summaries. But what we are trying to do is be sure that when something comes in, the engineer lets us know how they've addressed the comments and where those are in their plans, because we want to get you in and out of the process as quickly as possible. And so we will be, right now we are embedded in completeness review, but we will be more embedded in completeness review. I do also want to take this opportunity to agree with Andy, and I want to thank all of y'all, because you guys are going to help us make this process better. I want your feedback. I know we had to do this in a hurry, and we've already benefited from some of your feedback on some things. There will be some glitches in the beginning. It's going to be a little bit rough at the beginning. I think that it will become more easier as we move forward and we start to see how it really is working. And let us know what you think. Andy was probably talking about me when he said, "Don't email me and say I hate it," But anyways, all
email her, not me.
all kidding aside, you guys are the ones with some of the ideas that are going to help us make this better. I've committed to Commissioner's Court, when we took our Chapter 482 and Title 30 forward, that we are going to listen to y'all, and we are going to try to, if there's an unintended consequence or something we need to work through, we're going to try to work through that. If we have to take code back to court to get that fixed, we will do that. But I've already benefited from some very helpful suggestions and some questions being raised, like, how do I navigate this, or how do I navigate that? That really makes us stop and think, and we're going to try to do that. Teresa, if you'd like to say something quick about the code compliance summary, that'd probably be helpful, because I imagine people are wondering what that is.
Sure. And again, my name is Teresa Calkins. I'm with Travis County TNR Development Services, and I can relay that our process to address the House Bill 3167 requirements, it mirrors very much the City of Austin's process. So we've implemented prerequisites for filing a subdivision application with Travis County, and as Andy described, these are any of your approvals that are required from other jurisdictions, and some of those may have long lead times, such as FEMA approvals or TxDOT approvals for right-of-way improvements. There may be other internal processes, such as a TIAA that's required. That is, a scope is required to be approved by Travis County before it's completed. The review of the TIAA would need to be complete. The mitigations identified in a draft phasing agreement submitted with a subdivision application. The application process will include documentation of all prerequisites that have been completed and the outcome of those. We also have a development assessment process, like the city, and we strongly encourage applicants to participate in that process so that we can help them identify the prerequisite requirements that relate to their application. the requirements for the submittal for a development assessment will also comply with the fair notice requirements. So you're actually also establishing your grandfather dates for code, but we have that information in our chapter 482. Probably the biggest change in our process will be the code compliance summaries that we're asking to be submitted with the subdivision application. Keep in mind, at Travis County, we have the same staff that's implementing 3167 that we've had all along. We intend to comply with these tight deadlines. We have 5 engineers and 5 planners, and we're planning to utilize them to best effect. The code compliance summaries, we're developing those as fillable form PDFs, which basically include the code requirements, and it also makes reference to transportation criteria manual and drainage criteria manual requirements. And what we're asking for you to do is simply identify in just brief terms how you've met those code requirements and where we'll find them in the application. We actually plan to include that as a document that's part of your subdivision application, and the intent is to provide transparency for how the application meets the code requirements and get you through the process quickly. We'll have those documents up on our website along with the description of our process tomorrow. I can say that, much as Andy indicated, the website information will only grow as we get more information about this process and we can provide more detailed descriptions. The code compliance summaries that we have now will be PDF forms that you can reference for your information, but we are working on fillable form documents that should be easy to fill out and provide with your submittal. And with that, I'll turn it back to Andy.
Why not site plans? What's the reasoning behind that?
They're not covered by the law, so that's it.
Hi, my name is Candace Craig. One of the things I'm seeing with these changes is that there are potentially a lot of off-cycle issues that we need to address. How will the waivers and all of those things be handled procedurally? So off-cycle meaning it's not part of a site plan application?
Well, it's part of, we've created a project assessment that would allow you to give us enough information to make a recommendation and an analysis of your variance request. So our fee structure is set up, at least the development services and the city is set up where we have 2 components to our fees. There's a review of the variance, which we would charge as part of the project assessment, and then there's actual the commission fees, like going to the commission meeting, doing the backup, the formal approval. So we would actually ask you to file. We'll have separate requirements. If you want an environmental variance, there's a list of requirements. If you want a cut-fill variance, you have to give us a grading plan and all these things. So if you request that with the project assessment, we'll ask for that detail. We'll charge the fee. We'll do the review. We'll make a recommendation, a variance assessment recommendation saying, based on what you've given us, staff can either support or not support when you file your formal application.
Including the waivers then?
Including waivers, yes.
Okay.
So the idea is that to have a vehicle that ties the application to the formal submittal is the project assessment, so that there is something of record that shows all the waivers we've given or variance we've recommended, that when you come in, you just reference them. No other questions? Oh wait, Amanda's coming back.
Hi, Amanda Brown again. So it seems like the county and the city are working really closely together, and I really appreciate that. Have y'all been working with TxDOT as well, since we need to get those driveway waivers in advance? Are they aware of the new process and how it's going to impact their waiver?
So they're not
driveway.
They're not tied to us. I mean, they do participate in the TIAA review. So if you're doing a zoning case, obviously they're going to see that. I think if they participate in the Travis County TIAA process. So if you're doing a traffic impact, you're going to already probably have those locations fixed, and they could issue that permit. And so it's rare that for subdivisions that's not already occurred. But they're not distributed in our review. It's a separate process. The only time they are distributed is in the TIAA process.
Okay.
My name's David Whitworth, here representing the Austin Infill Coalition. And I have more of a suggestion than anything, but I know that hopefully you and other people in the room are involved with the code rewrite. I think hit a point where re-subdividing one lot into two lots for infill purposes has really hit a point where there's possibly too much review, and it hurts us, it hurts the buyers, it backs up the city. And possibly what you could do is increase the threshold before going through this process kicks in. For example, in Code Next Draft 1, they had written that if you had enough land area for 2 duplexes, you could just build 2 duplexes, and you could bypass re-subdivision. For example, 45% impervious cover is 45% impervious cover either way. The roads are built, zoning is reviewing for health and safety and fire and all that. So take that into account, that instead of funneling everything through this incredible process that you're having to come up with, possibly a relief valve can be to increase the threshold at the bottom, particularly for these small projects that don't increase impervious cover above allowed impervious cover, et cetera. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is being recorded. We'll provide your comment through to the folks working on the rewrite. One of the things I will say is if we need adjustments to what the code we just passed, the rewrite would probably be the opportunity to do that. I mean, the draft is coming out around the 1st of October, with hopefully a council action in December on a first reading. So if we need tweaks to this, that's our opportunity. So again, feedback on what we need to adjust between now and then would be really helpful, because that's when we would adjust our code. We obviously would have to go back to Commissioner's Court to confirm that if we do anything like that. But those are good comments. And like I said, this is recorded and we're taking notes, and we'll send them forward to the folks working on it.
Hi, my name is Shelley Mitchell. I have a couple questions about the project assessment that you went over. Just for clarification, there will not be a completeness check associated with that?
There is.
Oh, there is.
But it's not at the same level as a formal application.
Okay.
Again, if you are identifying I need a variance, there's a list of things we have to evaluate that. So there is some level of completeness.
So you identify the items that you want an assessment on?
There's an overall general level of what we have to we have to show the lots, we have to show the roads, right-of-way widths. There's a general level of things we need to evaluate a subdivision. If you ask for more detailed analysis on a waiver or variance or alternative compliance, there'll be a different checklist saying to evaluate that I need this. So there is a completeness checklist, but it's much less stringent than a regular application. But we do have to have, to get a minimum review, we have to have a minimum of information, so we will look for it.
No, I agree. I misunderstood that, so I want clarification. So then that would be 2 weeks?
It's
or
10
days?
It's the same 45 calendar days, 10 days for us to respond. So.
And then the outcome of that, will that be a letter, or what's the outcome
So
at the end of that process?
our outcome of a project assessment will be like our standard comment report, but it's not comments that you have to clear, it's recommendations and an analysis. So our analysis shows you should go back and look at these things. These are things we believe you're not compliant with. We suggest you make changes. But again, it's not a comment that you must go do. You could come forward and file your application not correcting those, but the same comment will appear, so that would kind of defeat the purpose.
And so during that process, if you're requesting a waiver or variance or something, or fee in lieu for water quality, then you would also get that at the outcome of that?
Yes, you get a recommendation and an analysis. And that process does allow for, we send you our initial analysis. Hey, I want to come meet with you. I want to discuss this before you come back with something. That's the intent, is that we can do that. It's shorter than the review of a subdivision, again, to try to keep it moving. We're on a shorter time frame to try to get you through it, but to allow that opportunity for discussion.
You'll have a case number too.
Oh yeah, you do have a case number, and the case number would carry through. So
will that have an expiration?
180 days from when we give you our last response.
Okay. And then that carries over to the county as well? So
Yes.
if you're in the ETJ, that same process applies?
If you're under Title 30, again, the county has a slightly different process for 482, which is their section of the code that's not in the city ETJ. But inside our ETJ, where we're under the single office, we'll have the same process.
And then will y'all have a process similar to that?
We're matching it very closely.
Okay. And so then y'all will handle the completeness check directly when it falls fully in the county? Okay.
Unless the city steps up to, we'll do our own completeness.
Okay. And then for, leading up to that project assessment, if you're trying to get to the bottom of if you need something, recently ATD restructured and they have different people that are over specific areas of town, and there's a map and it's very transparent and it makes it very easy to contact people that know specifically about those areas for questions. Would the city consider doing something like that for other departments? Because trying to get stuff done quickly and identify what you need so that you're not redoing something, a lot of times if you know who you can contact.
So I can tell you, I can't speak for other departments. I can say Austin Energy I know has north and south.
Right.
I don't think Austin Water is divided by geographic area. We, in the past, the department had geographic areas, and what we found out was that we had to constantly change them because one area would get overloaded. So suddenly whoever had one section of town had nothing, and Bolden had 400 applications. And so we went away from that model to try to keep projects with the same reviewers, but giving geographic areas for us was, we couldn't balance it because we constantly had to change them because one section of town suddenly got overwhelmed. And so we tried that model and went away from it to try to balance the workload to make sure we could be timely. So I get that that's a little bit of a challenge. Like I said, Austin Energy does have that. I mean, a change I will say is Austin Energy is now going to participate in completeness check. So when you see comments from Austin Energy and completeness check, that just fair warning. I don't know what kind of comments they'll make, but they are going to participate now. Looking at especially on subdivisions, do you have the right easements? Did you identify your transmission towers? I don't know exactly what they'll have, but they are going to participate now. So you will get comments from them.
Okay. I've just found that other departments are still kind of doing that, and you have to, I find that I have to go through multiple different people to sometimes figure that out, so that's why I asked that.
And so if you were to fire an informational project assessment, right, so you want feedback from multiple departments and you want it committable, that's what this is for. File it and point out, this is what I'm looking for, and that's what we'd be able to give you.
Do you have a range of the fees that will be required for that?
The fee will be on our new fee schedule, and I don't have it yet, but we'll have it soon.
Okay.
When the council adopts a budget. So.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Andy Paul Linehan. You were saying that the planning commission and zoning commissions are going to handle these cases as they come in. So it might not be just the zoning commission, they might be dealing with a subdivision case that they haven't been real familiar with. And my question is, when you throw in the neighborhood groups in there and they show up 90 people opposing the plan, how are you going to process 16 things through the zoning or planning commission that aren't quite familiar with your rules and regulations? And all of a sudden, you don't know who's telling the truth or what's based off of next door or what. How are you dealing with the neighborhoods?
I don't have a good answer for you because, again, we have to be at commission in 30 days. And so if there's a variance associated with it, the commission has discretion. If not, most of you have been through this before and know that if there are no variance or waivers by state law, commission shall approve. Yeah. No matter how many neighbors show up. And that's very challenging for our community, but it's state law written that way. So to answer your question about what happens if 90 people show up to speak, 90 people show up to speak. At the end of the day, if there were no variances or waivers and no discretion, and staff has recommended it, state law says the commission still has to approve it. So we've been through that multiple times. It's very contentious. It happens. So this process actually makes that a little more difficult because staff won't be issuing a backup in a recommendation where a neighbor could look and say, what are they going to act? How are they going to act? We won't have time to issue that. So I don't know what the outcome of that will be. We're going to have to figure that out. I have not briefed the Planning Commission and ZAP. That's coming up to talk to them about how this works. I think this will be a difficult change for them as well, that you can't postpone things or it's approved. So we're going to work through this together. So
I mean, there's got to be a process for postponement. You just never know what's going to happen. So there's no ability to postpone?
There's not. There is not. They have to act.
Okay.
If they don't act, it's approved.
Okay, and then, it seems like this new process called project assessment, it could be very varied about what someone brings in versus it's 15,000 acres versus 10 acres. I mean, how are you gonna base fees?
So we will not do a fee study on that in this short a time. We're gonna base our fee on what we were using for development assessment. And I can't quote what that is. There is a range on those, a little bit with per acre, but it's not on the same scale as our subdivision fees, which are much higher. But again, we're not doing a complete code analysis of the entire thing in the level we would do with a formal subdivision. This should be high-level guidance on, code compliance things. You have lots in the critical zone, you didn't request a variance. You have floodplain, you didn't show it. Those types of, that's what we're intending for it to be, or if you have variances, to try to give you an assessment on this is where we are with this. So because we're already past our budget being submitted, that's what I told council, we've already submitted our budget, our fees are already set. Same with the other departments. Council will be acting on that in a couple weeks. If we have to, we'll come back mid-year and say, hey, we need to adjust our fees based on the process changes that were incorporated in, 3167 changes. So today, we'll probably go forward with something very similar to our development assessment on fees. That's the best I can give you.
You don't know right now.
I don't know what the number is, but it's not the same as our subdivision fees. It's less.
All right, but, usually, one track has a lot of hair on it, and some track has very little hair. And the fees are gonna be based off the same, or is it gonna be based on the fact that I'm doing a floodplain modification and a variance for cut and fill, and, are those fees gonna be tacked on?
So the
per
base,
all the differences you might have?
So a base fee would be the base fee, and then you've identified I need a floodplain variance, I need a critical zone variance, I need site distance variances, I need construction on slopes. We have fee schedule for variances of what we would charge for those, and there's two components to it. And again, there's the commission support, and then there's the review. We will charge the review, do the review and our recommendation based on the project assessment, carry that forward to the actual formal application, and then there's the fee to go to the commission and defend it.
But then when you go to the commission, you're gonna be making a recommendation on your variance.
We should match if you don't change it, we'll match what we did at project assessment.
Okay.
So, but that's a certainty you do get, is we make that analysis and say, if you do these things, yes, we agree, we'll support that. If you don't change it and you come in for your formal application, that will carry forward. And so you file it saying, here's my staff recommendation on the variance. I'm formally requesting it take me to commission. That's the way that's gonna work.
We gotta assume that variance stands when we get to the planning commission, even though you hadn't made a recommendation.
Well, the planning commission, of course, has the jurisdiction to overrule us. They always do. Chris Herring.
Especially if there's 90 neighborhoods.
Again, if you have a lot of variances, there is discretion by the commission, and I can't predict what they may or may not do. You have a lot of experience, Most of the time, they follow staff recommendation, but not always. And so I can't give you more certainty than saying staff will carry our recommendation forward.
But it's based on project assessment instead of the actual action that they're taking. It's based off the history that you prepared.
Yeah, we will have a recommendation to carry forward. So if that
Good
helps.
luck.
Stuart Harry Hirsch. When smart housing was implemented in 2000, there was fast track review for subdivisions, 14 days for preliminary plan, final plat and construction plans, 7 days for corrections. My understanding from your presentation today and the discussion at council last week is that this ordinance only implements the change mandated by state law, and we will not have available for smart housing affordability development the fast track reviews that we've been promised since 2000.
This doesn't change. So the smart housing, the stuff that's built into our agreements with neighborhood housing, doesn't change. They're still shorter than this, and we would still honor that. So they're today at, I think, instead of our 20 business days, they're at 15 for smart housing certified projects. We're not changing that. We'll still be shorter.
Okay, and will there be a document available to us to indicate that that's the case?
I'll have to get with Rosie and ask her how they want to document that. But yeah, we would not lengthen what we've committed to for smart housing certified projects. We're not going to lengthen it past what it is today. I think it's I think you're right, I think it's 7 days for an update or something, so
Or-
we'll stick with that.
Yeah,
Now,
it's-
what I will say though is I can't take you to an earlier commission,
I understand that.
but, I mean.
And we can't ask for variances and get faster review time.
Yeah.
And we cannot claim full 245 rights. We have to get an environmental sign-off in the desired development zone that we're doing better than what 245 would otherwise require. And in the drinking water protection zone, we're required to do better than what 245 would allow, and the council would have to approve that variance. So I'm hoping that, from what I heard today, none of that is changing, and I just wanted to clarify
Yeah, no,
that.
we're not, and I would say that with council's direction for the city of Boston anyway, focus on affordable projects, that I would expect in the land development code rewrite, that's being accounted for. I mean, that would be your avenue to talk to them about it, but we won't change what we're doing today.
Okay,
We'll
thank you
keep it.
very much.
Hi there, Justin Lang. The project assessment, so is that that's a development application that you will
Yes.
submit? Correct?
It's being finalized today, I hope. We've prepared it, we've created it. It's with our graphics people making it into an application that'll be downloadable hopefully tomorrow.
Okay, and so there's only one of those for a project, right? So you don't have
Yes.
to do a project assessment for each variance that you're requesting, or?
No, we would do all the variants under one assessment.
Okay, and so if you're going through the process and they find that there's something else that you need that you didn't request, that'll just be part of
Yeah,
the recommendation, or?
So if you need a variance that requires a commission,
Uh-huh.
I mean, you're gonna need a recommendation from staff, so we would ask you to go back to the project assessment phase. That's a good question. We haven't talked about what happens if you discover, you had a project assessment, no one identified a variance, it pops up later. Can you use the same assessment? I will have to think about that one. That's a good question.
All right, thank you.
Really appreciate all the work y'all have done on this. It's a big job in a little bit of time. But I'm Jeff Jack, and I'm former chair of the Board of Adjustment. And this never happened in the board, that a project got through the city without catching a code issue. It happened all the time. So what happens if they get through your entire process and out in the field an inspector discovers that they haven't met the code on a certain issue? What happens then?
I can't, it would depend what it is, would be my guess. I mean, we'd have to look at it. If it's something we missed in the code, I think state law is gonna give them the opportunity to leave it. If it's something that wasn't part of subdivision review, I mean, for instance, the water service is constructed incorrectly, I think that is something that isn't part of a subdivision review. So I can't answer that for you directly. I mean, it would depend what it is my guess. But if it's something we missed, the review staff didn't catch it, and it got approved, under state law, now I don't have the ability to make the applicant change it.
Well,
It's very clear that we don't have that ability.
Hello, Andy. Chris Rendazzo. Good to see you. I had a question about concurrent reviews. So the way I looked at the outline was that concurrent reviews are not allowed. Is that correct?
So concurrent reviews that involve zoning and a subdivision are not allowed.
And so subdivision applications, so preliminary plan, final plat, subdivision construction documents will be? No?
Finish one, then do the next
Same
one.
for the count?
Yep,
So
same
that's
for
an
the
alignment
county.
between both? And
And I think that's in 482 and in Title 30. I think that's across the board.
Okay.
But again, the timelines, the difference being today, it might take you a year to get to that commission. Now it's 30 days. So you should be able to go
30
through.
days for the first time.
Yeah, but and then when you file again, we have 15 days. So you should get through the commission 3 times in 90 days. I mean, and if we're not done in 3 times, something's wrong. So, yeah, it's a lot shorter.
Yep.
But again, it might take you a year to get one commission date now. Now you get 3 chances to go to commission, at least. If you can get there faster, good. You might be able to, but.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
Hi, Andy Ferris at Bushi. My question was about grandfathering. If an applicant has a process that is ongoing currently, say like a subdivision or a zoning application, and they're approaching an expiry date and they have to withdraw and resubmit after the new code is adopted, are they automatically required to follow the new?
So is this for a preliminary plan that already exists or for a new one?
Let's say for one that already exists.
We've discussed, and I don't have a final answer for you, but I think Alyssa's typing back there. Right, make sure we get this question, because so if you're asking a question today, the answer we have will be on our website and frequently asked questions. This one, and I think the other one I said I don't know, I have to come back. We'll try to answer it as fast as we can and put it on there, so look there, that'll be where we can post them. Technically, a withdraw and resubmit is, subject to new code, but if you have an approved preliminary plan and it's a final plat, you still have your plat rules. Is your question, would you be under the 30-day shot clock, Bill, or is your question what's your question about that?
Yes, would you be under the new 30-day?
I'll have to get with law and respond to that. It's a great question, because we don't have a formal answer yet.
Andy, Joel Wixon. Regarding the project assessment process, could you allude to any involvement with TCQ, SCS documentation, their WPAP components? Are those going to be required before we submit? And also follow up on conditional overlays like the Hill Country Road lay or neighborhood plans. What kind of compliance assessments are involved?
So we don't require your TCEQ, right? I mean, we might mention you need it, but that's between you and the state. We're not involved in those. Hill Country Roadway, as it applies to a subdivision, yeah, we would have to look at that, but there's not many requirements for a subdivision other than maybe driveway location. If you're doing something, if you're varying something that's in the Hill Country, I would tell you to do a project assessment, let us look at it and give you a formal answer. Neighborhood plans you'll have to comply with. I mean, that shouldn't have to be a prerequisite review. We're going to pull it up and look, and say that's a requirement you have to comply with, unless you want to vary from it. If you want to vary from it, we would ask you, actually, you have to go do that beforehand, because that'd take counsel.
Second question on the approved with conditions. I think a lot of our clients are going to raise concerns that we have a 10-page list of conditions. What would your advice be to limit that, or perhaps reapply to eliminate some of those conditional?
So you're talking about for an administrative application?
Yes.
I mean, if you'd rather be disapproved with conditions, I can send you to the planning commission, and they could give you that. You could ask to voluntarily go to the commission, but I mean, to keep things administrative, state law prohibits us from saying you're disapproved. Staff can't say that, so we will have. That's why I mentioned it, because you're gonna be like, I thought I was approved. I got 20 pages of conditions. I don't have a way to make that feel better, other than it'll say approved.
Okay. Thanks.
Hello, Jerry Johnson. Just for clarification on another concurrent question with zoning and site plan, since the site plan is not deemed to be under the new statute, will they still be able to do a zoning case and site plan concurrently?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That doesn't change.
And the rules for the site plan as far as time frame, et cetera, on your end
Doesn't
is the
change.
same?
I will say that as we move to, when we do our permanent rules, again, these are emergency, and I'm limited to changes to subdivisions. When we do our permanent rules, I will probably move site plan to the same timelines, 30 and 15, just for consistency, because it's confusing to have one be on 20 business days, the other one be 30 calendar days. We'll probably switch them, but I can't. Yeah, well, I can't do that till I do the formal rules.
Right.
We can, on an emergency basis, I can only change things related to the actual ordinance we adopted. So we talked about doing it, and I was told, no, you can't do that until you do. But your formal rules, sure. So I would like for us to be consistent. I mean, I think we will make that change.
And you said the formal rules will probably be a couple months out.
I would guess a couple months. Again, so council actually asked me to bring back and brief them on the rules we've adopted, which is kind of interesting. And I told them that we would wait a couple of months to get comments and feedback from the stakeholders and from our staff about, did we adopt something that works, or do we need to tweak it so that when we do a permanent rule that's going to live on, that it's right. And again, if there's things that need to change in code, we would try to put those in the code rewrite. So it will be a little while, but my intent is to make them, match, because it'd be very confusing. Like, was that 20 business days? Was it 30 calendar days? Which is it? So we'll try to sync them up.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Andy. Eric Schultz. A question on the land use commissions. And if you had cases up for a commission and you couldn't get a quorum, does that mean that
it's approved?
it's approved. That's what I thought. Okay.
So my concern is not a quorum, but the concern I have raised at multiple levels is people abstaining. Because you don't know, right, till they get the case and they see it and they go, well, I've worked for someone that worked on that, I can't vote on it. I'm very concerned about that. We don't have an avenue to address it today. We will be stressing to the commissions, if you're not going to show up, you need to tell us, because if we don't act on that day, everything on the agenda is approved. I don't think that will happen. I think they'll get the importance. I believe our commissioners are committed to serving the public, and we'll make sure we get there. But I am concerned about someone showing up and having to recuse themselves and not be able to vote, and suddenly we can't get a quorum vote. I don't have an answer to that. I mean, I can't just go add more commissioners or anything. So I don't know. But we've discussed it, because it's definitely a concern, because you never know what someone might have to recuse themselves from until you get there. So but that is a concern.
What about Christmas and holidays?
Well, so again, we have an application calendar of when you can actually submit. And so if there's not a commission meeting, there's not going to be a week you can submit. We're going to tie those submittal dates exactly to 30 days when we know the commission's going to act. So when you get into November, you may run out of times you can submit towards you get to the end of the year. Just, fair warning. We're going to put out a calendar that shows you what those dates are, but towards the end of November, there's not a lot of opportunities for a formal submittal for the first time, because 30 days lands on the holidays. There's no meeting. So that, again, when you see the calendar, it's directly tied to commission, and for Title 30, it's tied to both our commission and the Commissioners Court, because they have to act on the same day. So there's some weeks where they don't meet, that maybe we're meeting, but you can't submit a Title 30 application because I can't get you to both. So it's definitely a challenge. We'll have a calendar. It'll be on the website telling you this is when you need to submit and which commission you're going to go to. That'll be known when you file. Other questions? No? Oh, Hank's got to come ask a question.
Get over to the dais over here. In regard to the boards and commissions, what's going to happen if you get a different recommendation from the commission than you get from Commissioners Court?
You're denied, and you get to file, but you get to come back.
What if they're both approved, but approved with different conditions?
Satisfy them both and come back.
Okay.
This would be an interesting, right?
It's going to be difficult to get. It's going to be difficult for the commissioners to get what happened at Commissioners Court.
Well, no.
2 hours before we hear it.
Till you get to
land use commission.
I agree.
So
I absolutely agree.
You're going to have different recommendations.
They might. Well, I think the staff recommendation would be the same. Right. So the recommendation we're going to give will go to both the Commissioners Court and to our Land Use Commission. What the commissioners choose to do with it, of course, is they're an independent body. Now, if they propose different, I don't think it complies with this, or they act on a variance differently. We haven't worked through what happens if it's a Commissioners Court variance versus it's a Land Use Commission variance. How does Commissioners Court act? So if it's a City of Austin Land Use Commission variance, what does the Commissioners Court do? Do they do an approval with conditions, which then means it has to come back? Or can they just say approved, so that that's an outstanding legal question for us, is how do we instruct them to act? We have a little while. Nothing's going to get to them under this bill for a little bit. But that's a great question, because that's not happened, right? I mean, normally we have our stuff and you have a month and then you go to the Commissioners Court.
But it still has.
It still has.
That it could have happened. It just hasn't happened because we can.
You've had 30 days to work it out. Now you got 3 hours.
Yeah.
To work it out.
You have 3 hours.
3 good hours.
You can't
It'll
postpone
be
it.
3 good hours.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in the past, Hank, you could have postponed it, right? So the Commissioners Court could have pulled it up and said, just postpone this for 14 days and let's come back and we'll have it. We can't postpone now.
No more postponements.
Yeah, no more postponement.
Okay.
So that's really a challenge, for sure.
Catherine Loiza, on project assessments, will those be going through the completeness, will they be reviewed by DAC, or will they be reviewed by the review team?
The same staff that does completeness check for the other applications.
And
So it is modeled after a development assessment, but the full review teams will get it.
And will there be the same, so once you go through a project assessment and you have a certain review team, I know you mentioned something about trying to keep a consistent team when the formal application comes in. Will that be strictly followed, or how will that play out?
As best we can. I mean, we have, when we as long as we have consistent staff. I mean, I have staff getting promotions and leaving us, and that is good for them, but a challenge for us and for you. But where we can, we'll have a case team assigned, we'll keep the same people. Because again, they're familiar with it, they made the recommendations for project assessment, they should get it back. So that, we definitely will try to do that. I mean, I can't promise it 100% because again, I have staff that move around because we have a lot of opportunities for that.
So I haven't personally submitted a development assessment in quite a long time, but when that first was initiated, it was pretty much, you got a report that was basically spitting out the comment library as far as what was lacking. So will the project assessment be the same, or will staff actually say, we do not like this, or we recommend you change this, to be not just getting a comment library?
No, the idea is that it's a much more thorough analysis. I mean, these are areas where we see non-compliance with code. We recommend you change it. Yeah, it's not, it shouldn't be comply with Imagine Austin. I mean, that's not helpful, y'all know that. So the intent is to actually do at least a high-level review and say, you know, I can't analyze this because I'm missing some information. That you might get that. But hopefully if you have it on the paper, you're crossing a critical water quality zone, you don't show the critical water quality zone. I mean, you know, you have lots that are smaller than allowed by your subdivision code. I mean, hopefully we catch those kind of things. That's the idea. Or you don't have a service extension request, you need one. Well, I don't think I need one. Well, Austin Water thinks you do. So, I mean, we're hoping we catch those kind of things. But it should not be a regurgitation of canned comments.
Andy, I would add that there's a distinction between the two different applications in that the project assessment is intended to be iterative. So the
development assessment's a one time.
Is just you give us information and we give you a report and that's it. The project assessment is it's going to be similar in that we give you a lot of comments and then you can come back to us and say, okay, I'm going to change things, and then we give you another one.
So just for the record, that's Chris Yanis with Development Services speaking, since he's not at the mic.
The next question is also directed towards the county with Anna. At the Commissioner's Court, you indicated that you were going to have this new process apply to site plans. And
Not
so,
because it's required by 3167, but
Right.
by the end of the year, we hope to include site plans so we have less amount of processes out there.
so my question is, if we're in the City of Austin's ETJ and we have a D site plan that we're submitting, then who's gonna trump? Are we gonna go through the city's process with a current review?
You would
or-
still have to go through both of them concurrently, but separately, because site plans are not part of the single office, and they have not been. Subdivision construction plans, yes, site plans, no. So that hasn't changed.
So.
You still have both processes.
So if we need a TIAA, for example, then we would have to have that completed first?
I
As you're
suggest
saying,
if you need a
yeah.
TIA, that you work on that, you start working on that before you come in.
So, okay. I have one more question.
Just stand
Or just tell me if it's
Vera Bassaro again. Real quick question. I'm glad Austin Energy's on board. Just curious, what discussions have there been discussions with the fire departments?
Yes. I mean,
So tell us about that, Andy.
well, so, I mean, we talked, so Vera, we talked to them. No, so as far as your question of, they have asked for increased staffing for this year, and they're well aware of the deadlines that come with this. And again, project assessment says alternative, what is it? It's not alternative minimum, but it's alternative method of compliance for fire. So you have a subdivision of Mueller where you have narrow streets and different block lengths. They're going to ask you to work that out through a project assessment so that you come in with a recommendation. So you need bulb outs to have our fire truck apparatus or whatever it is, that's worked out before you come in. They are under the same requirements for 30-day review. That hasn't changed. And again, they did ask for additional staffing in their budget. So.
Andy, Stephen Spears. Quick question followed up on the fire question. As you know, because you worked with us on the specific issue, where we have existing PUD which have approved street cross sections in it, and our preliminary plan was held up substantially because fire department didn't agree with the approved cross-sections that were part of the ordinance of the PUD. Does that go away? Do they still have 30 days when they
They still
choose not to abide by the ordinance that was approved?
So I can't speak to that, and they're not in the room. I will say, I would see that will still be a conflict. My advice would be to file a project assessment, highlight it, and say, resolve this now before I file my subdivision plan. That would be the best advice I could give you. And the same thing with the Travis County single office, where we have a PUD ordinance. We've adopted this traditional new urbanist stuff with small streets, and the county wants bigger streets. File a project assessment and ask us to work that out.
Okay.
So that you don't go spend your money designing subdivisions that then we can't approve. And so it now gives you an avenue. That would be an advantage of a project assessment. It gives you an avenue to let us work that out. Or you could file it and say you have 30 days, but I'm sure you'll come back with, disapprove with reasons. It would be beneficial to let us try to work that out before you come in and before you spend your money doing your design. More importantly, I think. So.
Okay, thank you.
Justin Lang again, one more question. Austin Water, how is that gonna, are you gonna go through the Austin Water review in the development assessment phase, and that's when they'll give you red lines and on your plans and all that, or how's that gonna
Kevin's
work?
here. And Kevin can correct me. As Kevin Critton, Austin Water is here. My understanding is they're not going to change their methods of review. They will be required to say, if they're doing markups, what section of the code they're highlighting.
Okay.
So they will have to put some notation of this red line is related to whatever. Okay, so wait, why don't you?
Okay. Gotcha, okay. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Cody Carr. Couple quick questions. Can you speak to the current subdivision timeline, your kind of average approval, and how you see this process shaking out in terms of an average approval time?
So, I don't know what our average approval is. I think the statesman has asked for that, and I have the information. I don't have it with me. I believe in the long term, again, once we work through, I think we're going to have some speed bumps and challenges as we go through this. Long term, the actual review will go much quicker. Again, you can get to commission 3 times. The work to get to a code compliance solution across the 14 departments that participate in our review will still be there. But when it happens is before you come in. So I think if we get that stuff right, the actual review will go quicker. I think long term, this will be a shorter process, start to finish. I don't know if that'll hold true, come September 2nd or 3rd, whenever we take our first application, but I think in 6 months or so, it will. I don't know what our average approval is off the top of my head, but we do have it. I can send it to you. I know we pulled it today, so.
Yeah, I think in terms of long-term affordability challenges, it's important to reduce the length of the review time and hopefully therefore the cost of the review on smaller projects. And I have one additional question.
So I have your numbers here. Let me see if I can read it. Yeah, I have some with me. Oh, where are they?
That's right. I just had it on. I need my glasses too.
No, it's not glasses. Where is it?
Oh, you got yours?
One in my pocket. I'm old. I have to have these with me wherever I go now. Yeah. Let's see if I can read it too.
I will say a lot of the smaller projects will go faster because the majority of our cases, a lot of them that we get in are 4 lots or less. Those 4 lots now are administrative, even resubs and even flag lots. They're waivers. So normally you would have to go to commission, do all the notification, newspaper, all those things. Those things aren't required by state law anymore. So a lot of those smaller projects will go faster.
Yeah, for sure. So that's David Walgren speaking, just since we're recording. So Cody, to answer your questions, for the statesman asked us how many. We averaged 213 applications a year between FY 13 and 18, actually 336 applications per year. So far this year we've had 213, 21 per month. And then you said how long? Let's see. So since 13, the average it's been in review for 93 calendar days, with the applicant awaiting response 146 for a total of 239 calendar days on average. As David was mentioning, I think that With the change to have more administrative approvals on resubs, that's a large volume of our applications. Those will go much faster.
Very good.
I'm sure they will. So
One more quick question about House Bill 3167. I know within the bill, it speaks to the specificity that the comment reviewer has to include on their comments.
yes.
Can't be a boilerplate. It has to call out particularly how it pertains to that plan, and then offer a condition or a way with which that could be satisfied. Is that your understanding?
I don't know about us having to offer a solution, but we do have to specify exactly what code. We're meeting next week with our review teams to start talking about how those comments will be formatted. But yeah, every comment has to have a code or criteria section referenced on why the comment's there. And yeah, it can't just be a boilerplate. We will have to give that. As far as the specificity of what the comments actually say, I don't think it just says we have to quote, from what I remember anyway, it says we have to give you the code or criteria. We try to give you direction where we can. I mean, we want you to get through. I mean, you filed, we need to get you through. So we try to give you direction where we can. I don't think that'll change.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carrie Bressler. I had a question about the project assessment. You talked about it being iterative, and I was just curious, each time you come back, is that a new application? Are there new fees? Is it really just kind of reapplying?
It's an
into the
update.
same? Okay.
So it'll be treated like a regular application. You file, we'll give you comments in 21 calendar days or give you opinions or recommendations. When you bring it back, we'll do it in 14 days. The second time, you can do that twice. So you get a total of three trips through the cycle, and then we'll stop after that.
3 strikes and you win.
Can you talk about the administrative part again? You're just going to issue the comments. It's going to be approved with those conditions, and that's it. There's just
No, you need to come back and address the conditions.
okay 2 times.
No,
Or-
for formal applications. So if you bring in a formal subdivision application, and we issue an approved, it's administrative, so staff will issue the comments not through the commission. You'll have to come back and address those conditions before we'll issue an approval.
Okay.
The same thing would go with the commission. I mean, you'd have to come back and address whatever's outstanding. We'll take you back to the commission and they can act. If it's record your easement, it'd probably be approved with the condition of record an easement. Well, you're done. Bring us the easement, we'll record both together. But if it's other things, we'll say file another cycle.
I'm Kathy Winfrey with 911 Addressing. We are one of the reviewers for all subdivisions. The standards that we apply to street names submitted on subdivision plats and preliminary plans are not subject to code. And so I wanted to say, I think you covered that as a subclause when you answered the question earlier. So in our case, we wouldn't be able to give you a code reference saying what's wrong with this street name, but we do make an effort to make it as clear as possible how you would need to change the name that's labeled on the street spatial extent in order to meet the approval of 911 addressing review. Is that cool?
Yeah, and so you and I need to talk.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
I didn't know that. I mean, we'll figure out something, because I imagine that if you're doing a review, there is an enabling code somewhere. It may not be apparent to you. It could be under Homeland Security, for all I know. But there's something that enables you to actually do that review. 911 addressing, you're part of 911 response, which is enabled somewhere in our code. So we'll just have to find that for you, and I'll give the law department an ask.
Thanks.
That's an interesting.
Hi, Andy. Pam Badir again. I'm sorry, but I'm still confused as to what happens if after the 3 rounds of comments, the engineer has not satisfactorily cleared the city's comments. What happens at that point?
For a preliminary plan or final plat, it's not how many rounds, it's how long you take. You'd run out of time. You'd have to go back and either withdraw and resubmit, which we would allow for preliminary plans and plats, or be done. So subdivision construction plans, you get a year. You probably go through 5 or 6 updates just like you do now. Hopefully not. Hopefully that gets down to like 2. So.
What about a project assessment?
Project assessment is one response and then 2 updates for project assessment, and then that's all we'll do. We're going to stop.
Andy Paul Linehan again. Usually I come to you because there are difficult questions And there's been times where I've got staff go, well, I don't approve with your interpretation of the ordinance, and you have to take it to a director above me, which I've had to do, but it takes about 4 months to find out the director that the staff has interpreted the code incorrectly. How am we gonna deal with these where there's a complete disagreement over the way you're interpreting the code?
So hopefully that disagreement occurs in a project assessment format, but we will have to be quicker. I mean, for sure.
yeah,
We're
there's
gonna
just
have
no-
to be, because we owe you a response in the timelines by the law. I can't say, oh, get back to me in 9 months, because that won't work.
But what if you're wrong? I mean, what if I've got a problem that you were wrong and I got a beef about it? And so I wanna get it taken care of.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying, we'll have to be quicker in getting those questions addressed. I mean, it can't take 4 months. I mean, we'll have to do that quicker. So I'm aware of that. I mean, I'll say that, so.
But I mean, a lot of times you have to go to legal because you don't know the answer to the question.
Yeah, no, and I think, so you're pointing out something that, again, that's a change for how the city needs to operate. I mean, we have a deadline, you have a deadline, we need to respond faster. So hopefully we don't have as many of those, but, I mean, when we do, we have to respond faster. I can't wait 4 months. I mean, that's not gonna work, so.
I know, but it happens, as you know.
I know.
I write
Why
you all
don't
the
you,
time.
Paul, just go find easier projects.
I just don't know how much it's gonna cost to get the answer.
Well, he doesn't really work here right now. So Paul, one thing I'll mention is I do have a position called the development officer that I was created that could funnel to, and it's Brent Lloyd, who currently is working on the code rewrite, but he will get to come back. I've been promised that he will come back. But that position was created to take that away so that he could be the final answer on that at an administrative levels and do that coordination, kind of like the building official does on the building side, to try to expedite those things. He was here about 2 months, and we were starting to make some things go, and then he's working on the code rewrite now. But he will come back. And so that is the goal, though, that's the purpose of that position, is to try to get that to happen faster. I was fortunate to hire someone with that much experience that knows that stuff well and is going to expedite that stuff. So that is my answer, but again, until probably March or so, I won't have him back working here full time. Other question? Okay, so I really appreciate everyone being here. It's a lot great questions, and I appreciate y'all working with us. So we are having another meeting on Tuesday. Wednesday. It'll be the same meeting, same presentation. Don't feel you need to come again. Please look at the website for questions you've asked here. We'll try to put the answers up. Email us if you have questions. We'll get them up in a question and answer format as well. Thank you. All right, thank you.